Bienvenidos a Coffee Break Spanish.
Welcome back to the Coffee Break Spanish Show. Yo soy Mark.
Y yo soy Anabel.
Anabel, ¿cómo estás?
Yo muy bien y con muchas ganas de otro episodio. ¿Tú qué tal?
Súper bien y muy contento de que tú estés conmigo hoy para este episodio.
Pues sí.
A very interesting episode. I don't know if you picked that up. Estoy muy contento de que tú estés conmigo. This is a special type of verb, and we're going to be talking about this special type of verb
Eso
today.
es, Mark.
But more about that later. These are weekly episodes which are helping you take your Spanish to the next level, one coffee break at a time.
And if you are watching the video version, then remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And if you are listening to the podcast version, then also subscribe wherever you are listening us to.
Bueno, ya sabemos de qué hablamos hoy.
Eso es, hablamos del subjuntivo.
Perfecto, pues vamos a por ello.
Vamos.
Annabelle, I think the subjunctive, when we mention the subjunctive, I think this causes lots of concern for some learners.
Yes, but we are going to start easy. We are going to do an introduction on like the subjunctive and what it is.
Okay, so first of all, we're talking about verbs, and verbs typically have different tenses.
Eso es.
But the subjunctive is not a tense.
It is not. It's a mood.
Yes.
So it's not about what we say, but how we say that.
Exactly, yes. So give us some examples of situations where we would use the subjunctive related to mood. What kind of moods is it used for?
So it's used for wishes, for doubt, for prohibition, also orders, and possibility or probability.
Yeah, so all of these situations where normally in English we would just use the normal verb, but in Spanish we need to think a little differently about it.
Eso es.
In English, if we think about things very carefully, and if we're using really kind of correct English, if you like, then sometimes we do change our verbs ever so slightly. For example, if I were to say something, then normally I would say, I was saying such and such. But if I were to say, that's a different type of verb. It's actually the English subjunctive.
Eso es, sí.
But in Spanish, it's used a little more regularly than that.
It is, but the good news is that it is going to be triggered.
Yes.
So we are going to have these clues or these triggers that are going to let us know or to tell us that we are going to be using the subjunctive.
And I always think of these little triggers, these kind of phrases or set expressions that they literally ring alarm bells and you think, oh, a subjunctive is coming.
Eso es.
Before we talk about when to use the subjunctive and these triggers, perhaps we should look at how to form the subjunctive.
Okay, yes, sounds great. Yeah, me parece bien. The present subjunctive?
Yeah.
Okay, so to form that, we are going to take the first person singular from the present tense in the indicative.
Okay, so let's think about exactly what that means. If we go to the verb hablar, our famous verb hablar, to speak, we need to go to the present indicative, which is the normal present tense as we've learned it, and the first person singular, so the yo form, the I form,
Eso es.
which of course would be hablo.
Muy bien, hablo. So now that we have that, we are going to take away that O, and we have that root. And then we just add the endings.
Okay.
And the endings are easy, don't worry.
Okay, so we take off the O and we're left with the root. And then we add some endings. And I think you might recognize some of these endings.
Yo también lo creo.
So let's look at hablar.
An AR verb.
AR verb, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to look at hablar in the present subjunctive.
Eso es.
So go for it.
So it's hable, hables, hable, hablemos, habléis, hablen.
Okay, so these sound very like the endings of a regular ER verb
Eso es,
in the present indicative.
Eso es.
So almost identical apart from that yo form, which is hable.
Eso es.
So it ends in the letter E, hable, hable, hables, hable, hablemos, habléis, hablen. Okay.
Perfecto.
So what happens with an ER verb? Let's take, I don't know, comer.
Okay, so we say I eat in the present tense, in the indicative is como.
Como?
We take away that O and then we conjugate it. So the endings are coma, comas, coma, comamos, comáis, and coman.
So again, that sounds very, very familiar. It's basically the same endings as AR verbs in the indicative, with the exception again of the yo form. So coma, comas, coma, comamos, comáis, coman.
Eso es, perfecto.
What about an IR verb?
And this one, let's get one of the irregular ones.
Okay.
So let's take salir, for example.
Salir.
Yeah?
Okay.
How do we say yo?
So, yo salgo.
Eso es. So salgo from salir, we are going to take away that O and now conjugate it.
So we've got SALG as our stem, having taken off that O, and we're going to conjugate it with endings, and these are going to be the same endings as the ER verbs, aren't they?
Eso es.
So salga, salgas, salga, salgamos, salgáis, salgan.
Perfecto.
If you're not used to this idea of 6 parts of a verb, then we've got lots of other videos to help you with that. And indeed, our Coffee Break Spanish Season 1 course and podcast will help you get to grips with conjugating verbs and how important it is to know these different parts and how by learning them in this way, it really helps you.
I know, and practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so basically, what we're doing is going to the yo form of the present indicative, or normal present tense, looking at that, taking off the O in the end, and then adding subjunctive endings. The subjunctive endings are going to be ese, hemos, eis, en for the AR verbs, and then a, as, a, amos, ais, an for the ER and IR verbs.
Eso es. We basically switch them.
Yeah. Okay. So let's maybe talk now about the triggers, because we're going to look at a couple of triggers in this episode.
So there are many triggers, but we are going to be working slowly, and let's work with the trigger ojalá. I quite like ojalá. And ojalá is just to say that, I wish, I hope.
Yeah.
And it's just that adverb, just one word.
Yeah, ojalá. It's got roots in Arabic, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so ojalá, lots of words with AL in them in Spanish have got links to Arabic. So ojalá, meaning I hope or if only or something like that. And then we just follow it with a subjunctive.
Eso es.
Give us an example then.
So one example here is, ojalá mañana salga el sol. Yeah.
Sí, siempre. Ojalá mañana salga el sol. So there we've got salga, coming from salir.
Eso es.
We've got the ending coming off. So salgo, take off that O, and then add our ending. So we're talking about el sol. So third person singular, salga. Ojalá mañana salga el sol. Please let the sun come out tomorrow, or something like
Eso
that.
es, sí.
So I hope, or please, or if only, or something, some kind of exhortation like that.
Eso es, sí. So just ojalá, and then ojalá plus the subjunctive. But there are other triggers. Let's see another one.
Okay.
So this one is quizás.
Quizás. A lovely song. Perhaps. So perhaps or maybe.
So this is going to trigger the subjunctive most of the times.
Yeah, okay. So give us an example then.
So, quizás mañana hable con mi madre.
Okay, so we've got hable. We're talking about yo hable.
Eso es.
Because we've got mi madre. So we know it's I am going to be talking to my mother perhaps tomorrow. So perhaps tomorrow I'll talk to my mum. There is a future idea in English, but it's also, we don't actually know if it's going to happen.
And that's why, with quizás, it triggers the subjunctive because it's that doubt, that wish, that probability that it's going to happen.
So there's a possibility there that it might happen, but there's also a possibility it might not happen. And that's the whole idea of perhaps, or maybe. I'll maybe talk to my mum tomorrow. But I'm trying to think of a situation where there's maybe doubt, but there's less doubt. Maybe we should take this as an example. What if I invite you to a party? ¿Vienes a la fiesta?
Okay, so here I can say quizás vaya or quizás voy.
Now that's interesting. So quizás vaya. Vaya is an irregular subjunctive, and we'll cover that in other lessons. But vaya is from ir. So what Annabelle is saying is quizás vaya. Perhaps I'll go. Perhaps I'll come. To be honest, I'm not 100% convinced that you're coming. You don't sound mega keen about coming to my party.
Yes, especially because I'm using the subjunctive. So it's maybe I'll go, but...
I don't think I'm going to see you at my party.
No.
But if you wanted to say, I'll maybe come.
Yeah, quizás voy.
So if she says voy, from the verb ir, still irregular, but that's the present indicative, then I am fairly certain that I am going to have a guest that is Annabelle at my party. So quizás voy, using the indicative, there's more likelihood that it's going to happen.
Eso es.
Quizás vaya, I don't think I'm going to see you.
No, maybe I'm there, but
Who
it's
knows?
not likely.
Ojalá vengas.
Oh, no, sí.
Okay, so what is next for this episode?
So let's practice a little bit, no?
Muy bien.
So we are going to translate a sentence from English into Spanish, and we are going to see one of these triggers, and we are going to be using the subjunctive.
Okay, we'll give you 10 seconds to think about this. Go for the first sentence.
So the sentence is, I hope I can go on holiday this summer.
Okay, now just one little thing. Don't translate I hope with a verb. I want you to translate it using a word that we've covered in this episode.
Eso es.
Okay? So I hope, or if only, or I really, really hope I can go on holiday this summer. 10 segundos. Okay, so I hope I can go on holiday this summer.
So I hope here we can say ojalá. So ojalá pueda ir de vacaciones este verano.
So let's kind of break this up a little. We've got pueda. That's from poder. Poder, a radical changing verb. We see that O of the infinitive becoming UE. So normally you would say puedo, I can. But as we've done with all of our other subjunctives, we've taken off the O at the end and added those alternative endings, and it becomes pueda. Ojalá pueda ir de vacaciones este verano.
Eso es, perfecto.
I'll let you into a little secret how I've always translated ojalá.
¿Cómo?
I've always thought of it as fingers crossed.
Oh, no, yes.
Because there's no verb in there.
Eso es,
So
eso es.
fingers crossed I can go on holiday this summer.
Me encanta, ¿no?
Ojalá.
Ojalá, ojalá.
Okay, so your second phrase for translation is, perhaps they will arrive a bit late. And again, don't think about a future tense here. If you're used to using the future, don't think about that. Think again about what we've been talking about in this episode. Perhaps they will arrive a bit late. 10 segundos.
Eso.
Okay, so Annabelle, help us with this one.
So perhaps it's quizás.
Quizás.
And then they will arrive a little bit late. So lleguen un poco tarde. Quizás lleguen un poco tarde.
So this lleguen is our subjunctive.
Eso es, sí.
So lleguen, being the subjunctive, means that there's a fair bit of doubt that they're going to arrive. And we're translating this, they will arrive, with a present subjunctive. One other thing to mention about that is that lleguen has a little spelling change in there as well, doesn't it?
Eso es. It's just to match up with the pronunciation. So for that g sound, we need, with an E, we need a U. So G-U-E. So lleguen.
So double L-E-G-U-E-N. Otherwise it would be lleguen, which sounds very odd. However, if it's probably quite likely that they're going to be arriving a little bit late.
Well, then we use the indicative.
Yeah.
So quizás llegan tarde.
Quizás llegan tarde. The fact is, I know how late they leave every time. So
Eso es.
quizás llegan tarde. Huh?
Eso es. You can also kind of like be polite, and use the subjunctive, even though you know they are going to be late.
I love it. So in this episode, we've talked about, first of all, what the concept of the subjunctive is. It's used for these specific situations. It's a mood. It's not a tense. There are different tenses of the subjunctive, and we've been looking at the present tense today. We've looked at how it's formed.
Eso es.
With AR verbs, with ER verbs and IR verbs.
Yeah.
And also some common irregulars as well, because we can always go back to that yo form of the indicative.
Eso es. We have also been looking at some triggers with quizás, which is perhaps, and ojalá, which is fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay. I think we'll round off there. Pero ojalá ya entendáis mejor el subjuntivo.
Estoy segura que sí.
We do indeed hope that you have now understood the subjunctive better and how it works. And if you'd like to see all of the examples that we've included in this lesson in our written blog article, then do check that out. There's a link in the description for that.
Excellent. And if you would like more help with your Spanish and would like to receive regular free email lessons, visit coffeebreaklanguages.com/Spanish.
Yeah, and one other thing, just to squeeze in here, if you would also like more help with your Spanish, you can also use our book, 50 Spanish Coffee Breaks, which is a selection of short activities to help you with your Spanish, split up into 5-minute activities, 10-minute activities, and 15-minute activities. And you can find this in all good booksellers.
Excelente.
Pues eso es todo.
Sí, eso es todo por ahora. Muchísimas gracias, Mark, y gracias a vosotros.
Gracias y hasta la próxima.
Happy coffee breaking.
You have been listening to a Coffee Break Languages production for the Radiolingua Network. Copyright 2024 Radiolingua Limited. Recording copyright 2024 Radiolingua Limited. All rights reserved.